Hi, my name is Becca Overby, and I am here to tell my story.
Welcome, Becca.
Thank
How
you.
are you?
I'm good.
Thanks for being here.
I know.
I am so excited to hear your story. And I know there are so many parts, and it's going to be really fun to hear them, talk about them. To start today, would you take us back to the beginning of your life?
Yeah. I am the daughter of Steve and Leslie, and they are first generation believers. And they came to the Lord in college. They married at 18 and 19, were saved through Campus Crusade Ministry in Eugene, Oregon. And they've been married for 53 years. They raised myself and my siblings. I have an older sister than me. I'm that middle child energy. And my younger brother. And then we had an addition to the family who was my cousin's child, but we welcomed her into our family. And we had a very idyllic childhood. I grew up in safety. I grew up in love. I grew up with a dad that was very present. Had a very protected life. And that goes into a lot of like my parents' chaotic childhoods. And I think that sometimes when you have that generational shift, it includes like, if this was this, then they're going to go polar. They're going to go so extreme. And I think that was very well intentioned. And, but it was very sheltered. That's the word. I just didn't see nuance. Everything was very black and white, right and wrong, God's way or not. And yes, there are a lot of those things. But I just find, you know, as an adult now, that there's way more gray. There's way more like nuance to people's stories. So growing up in that space, I was eager to get out in the sense of I just wanted to make more friends. Love my sister. If you watch this, Bethany, you're my best friend. But I just was eager to, you know, kind of spread my wings, and I felt very potentially hinged, and I'm very unhinged. But yeah, so in 8th grade, and don't ask me why, 8th grade was the year, but I went into public school in 8th grade, and I loved it, and I did great, and by freshman year, I was my class president. So very, like, I did well, especially from an external perspective. Went to high school and did everything. I was in the plays and student council, just loved my friends, and yeah.
You were like the dream child for every parent.
Truly. Maybe. I mean, I think, because, you know, I can like juxtapose it with my older sister, who's very different than me. But she's also a dream, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so I think that as parents, like each child in their own unique way is a fulfillment of something. So anyway, the pivotal moment for me was when the summer between my sophomore and junior year of high school, 16 years old, and at that time, I always want to say this, I do recognize that my story is very different and unique in the way that I found myself in the situation I was in. And it was in the way, the best way I can say it, I loved my high school boyfriend. I did. In the way that a high school kid loves their, you know, partner. And, you know, I think about my parents who met at 14, married at 18, 19. They likely loved each other as well in that way that you do. Young love. Okay, so But we did find that I was pregnant. 16, all my life ahead of me, I was terrified and so shameful. I grew up in a family that there was no room for that. When I waited a few months to tell my parents because I wondered if I would miscarry. My mom had several miscarriages before she ever had a viable pregnancy. And so I kind of had that in the back of my mind. And I was like, well, if I can dodge, telling them and then that happening. And that was kind of the beginning of just like this sense of secrecy.
Yeah.
This sense of like, I'm safer in this situation if it's hidden. And I just think that God loves to bring things to the light.
As a mother of a 13-year-old daughter, I can't even imagine.
The older I get, the more I'm like, I was a child. So, waited that whole time. Finally, when I knew that, well, actually, I was going to go in for an x-ray. I had some stomach things going on aside from being pregnant. And I remember going up to their room, and it was July 11th, just after my 17th birthday. But 7-Eleven told my parents, walked up to their room, and they were still in bed. It was so early, probably like at 5 a.m. And I said, I'm about to tell you something that's going to change our family forever. All my life, my parents had assured me that there is nothing, and I do this now, there is nothing that you could ever do that would make me stop loving you. And I said to them, I'm going to cash in on that right now. And, I have to say that I remember my dad, he just came around, enveloped me in his arms, and held me. My mom's process was different. A lot of tears from her, which is understandable as a parent now. But she wore sunglasses all summer because her eyes were puffy. And she has said it was the death of a dream. And I understand that statement while I can also say, what I've learned here is that we cannot ascribe any story or outcome for our children.
That's right.
And man, we want to. And our definition of success or what success looks like might not be the path that we wanted. So I think I was just holding all my own shame as a teenage pregnant girl and the stereotypes that come with that, going anywhere, and I was also holding the shame of my mother.
Absolutely.
Her shame. Yeah. Because I was a constant physical reminder of disappointment to her. And again, I have so much grace in that. I think she has her own story, right? And her own reason why she wanted to shield me. I go back to like what I said in the beginning of just this desire to shield me from any pain. And so she had not succeeded in that in her own mind.
Yeah.
So
where did that lead you next?
Yeah, so what ended up happening was when I went to my parents, I was a good Christian girl who grew up in the church and like very far right leaning. And I knew before I ever went to them what good Christian girls do if they get pregnant. And I just remember, and I think I can see it more clearly now as I have more compassion for my teenage self, because there's a lot of guilt for me. But I remember almost saying in one breath, I'm pregnant and I want to give the baby away for adoption. And I just, I think that a huge piece of that is I think part of me at that time felt like I could fix, it would redeem the act that led to the pregnancy if I did this thing that everybody would want me to do. And I so sought the praise. Like I was a young girl who like was the lead in the musicals and like was in front of people and just thrived off of affirmation. And so to live in the space of I'm actually the disappointment. I'm disappointing to everyone. So how can I make it right? Well, I'm going to do the thing and give this baby to someone else. And so from the beginning, I had this like block in my mind and heart that even essentially, I think I've even written about this in those earlier years. It's so fascinating to watch the evolution of myself and my views of my own story. But just that I was actually, gestating a baby for someone else, that he was not intended for me and that he was actually intended for someone else. And along with that, I felt so much shame from myself and, like I mentioned, the people around me. I moved away. And it was terrible. It was terrible because it instilled in me something about hiding instead of bringing into the light and the freedom that there is.
Yeah.
Like in confession even, there's freedom. Who the Son sets free is free indeed. And Satan wants our things to be kept secret because he knows that with confession comes healing. And ultimately, with my confession of even being open now, 22 years later, there's freedom for other people in that.
Yeah.
And so there is a pull to the shadows of shame. So I moved away. And a long story short, in that space of, there was a family that heard about it, and heard about it, my pregnancy, and came to me. It was a family that I already knew. They were not strangers to me. And I had even attended their wedding as a child. And they had one son already that was very difficult, to conceive. And when they heard about my perfect boy, they asked if I would consider placing him with them. And those are the only people I met with. And I said, okay. And we journeyed through that pregnancy. I remember laying in bed, as you do. I mean, you've had babies. They're moving, they're responding to certain foods. I would sing all the time. And he'd roll around. And I just savored that time because it was the only time that he was mine. Yeah, so.
Would you be willing to take us to the day he was born?
Yeah. Yes, I remember those last weeks just feeling this tension. Because I was a teenager, I still wanted all the things that teenage girls want to do. Like I was sequestered, hidden away. And like we had family members that didn't know I was pregnant. Like we didn't do any holidays with people. It was like Fort Knox. So I longed to get out in the same way that I was so eager to like go to school. I was just like, this is the worst.
Yeah.
But also, I knew that the moment he emerged, that he would be gone from me. And so that tension of wanting it to be over, like any pregnant person, my goodness, you want it to be done by that point. Although I will say that there is pregnancy as a teenager hits different than in your late 30s. Amen? So, yeah, I just remember the tension. And I remember going into labor and not knowing, I didn't know my own body like the way that you do as an older woman. I don't know how to explain that, but I was just like, is this happening? Is this it? I guess every maybe first baby, people feel that way, like, ooh. But I went and they sent us home, and then I went back and I went home, and finally, went in, was admitted, and we called the adoptive parents at that point when I was admitted, and they live within an hour, so they were on their way. They arrived, and this was all part of the plan, that they would be in the room when he was born. I really wanted them to bond, almost to, and for sure, to the expense of my own.
Yeah.
But it even goes back to what I shared of just like this block of, he's not actually mine. So in leading up to the birth, one of the only things that we've really got out to do was to take a birthing class, because they didn't really have, now they have online things. I guess you could have done it from home now, but we went in person to this, is it Lamaze? Is that what it's called? I feel like that's an ancient of days word, but Lamaze class. And, you have all your very traditional couples ready to welcome a baby. Usually the only people taking Lamaze classes or birthing classes are first-time birthers. So they're all so excited for their first baby. And then there's me, a teenager with my mom figuring out how to birth a baby. And in that birthing class, the woman who taught the class was so kind. I just felt really seen by her. And she, at the final class, gave me a blanket. And it's this one. And she said, this is for you to hold your baby in, and didn't really say a lot more than that. There was a card with it. And I brought this with me to the hospital. So when he was born, he was caught, as they say, by his adopted mom. So first to hold him. And she cut the cord. So they left the room with him. And, I'm still bleeding. I'm passing the placenta. It's blurry. They ended up going home that night for the night to be with their other baby, who was not even one yet. He and his older adopted brother are less than a year apart in age. And they sent him to the nursery. And I remember, well, I don't really remember, but I've been told that I was weeping in my sleep, shaking. And a nurse, a very veteran nurse, came to the door and said to my mom, we need to bring that baby in here. He needs to be with his mother. She needs to be with him. And my mom said, I don't want her to change her mind. And I love my mom, and I know her heart was to help me walk in this decision that she felt was right and that I said that I wanted to do. But the fear of me knowing my true identity as his mother was there. So they did end up bringing him in, and in that moment is when I actually wrapped him in this blanket, and he slept in it with me that night. And my mom says that I settled fully, just stared at him all night. And then the next day, signed the papers and left without my baby, and with this blanket. And it kind of smelled like him. I didn't even want to wash it for a long time, but I slept with it for more years than I'd care to admit. And then 14 years later, I had my son Jones, and it was the most beautiful, redemptive birth experience of catching my own, pulling to myself, and getting to take him home. And each birth of my subsequent sons, so I have 4, my first and then the 3 that I parent, and they all came home in this blanket. And even when I was preparing to come and chat with you, I just like pulled it out of Dallas, he's 2, and I pulled it out of his crib because it's like been such a part. I mean, maybe bury me with it, but it's a token of the unifying. There is like this unique unifying thing that has brought all 4 of these beloved children of mine together. So
With that,
yep.
would you catch us up to today?
Yes, there's a lot in between, including like a very sad first marriage that led to divorce. Again, the more I look back on my own story, I hold more compassion for the whys of what trauma does in a person, and even the ways that like trying to appear like everything's fine or I'm recovered. I mean, I gave birth to my son, and then literally months later went to college. And I remember meeting my college roommate for the first time, who's one of my best friends now. And she's a midwife who delivers babies. Anyway, and she was at the births of my other sons. Anyways, but I remember meeting her, and I was like hanging a picture of my son on the wall, and she's like, and I was like, well, this is my son, and I had him a few months ago. And she was like, what? Like, yeah. And so just her even journeying through that with me, and then being at these other births, I don't know, it was beautiful. So, but in that, I just think that there's so much of wanting to appear like we have it together, not giving ourselves enough room or time, because it's actually when we slow down that we recognize our own grief, that we can recognize God's presence in it. If we're just trying to heal so fast, or like appear to be healed, or have it all together, it's actually when we slow down. There's a song that says, the slower I go, the faster I arrive.
Inviting him into that space.
Yes, to just settle. And that's,
And be an example, I think, to other people. I know that, even like leadership or ministry, I think one of the biggest mistakes we make as leaders is pretending like we have it all figured out. Because how does that invite everyone else, because no one has it figured out, into a safe space to know that their stuff, that it's okay to not have it all figured out? And that's been something over the last year I've prayed about, allowing Jesus to let me lead in a way that shows my vulnerability, shows my sin, shows where I don't have it figured out, because I want to be a safe place for others to come to. And I think, wouldn't it be incredible if that was all of us, right?
Because, even working in a church now, and I agree with what you're saying, when I see people walk through the doors of our church, I have my story. All this stuff, I've shared pieces of it, not even holistically. You have your stuff, which is the most beautiful story, but so heavy. And each person who walks in the door is carrying this stuff with them.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to be so hyperly focused on our own pain and our own trauma that we cannot have the eyes of Jesus to see people in their own story.
Yeah.
And I think even in the adoption space conversation, which is so riddled with bitterness, which is so riddled with competitive energy, who's the real parent? Who's the real one? Where do we find our place? How are we confident as an adoptive parent or as a first parent? And it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't. And I'm learning that because I can identify with the bitterness. And I feel like Jesus, in my walk, apprenticeship, discipleship to Jesus, will not allow me to return to that bitterness that is so easy to get into, so easy to step into. I put my children, my sons that I get to parent, to bed at night and snuggle them and hold them, and I think of my first. And it's easy for me in that space to be so angry at the systems, the people, jealous of the woman that did get to do that with him. Or I can say, thank you, God, for this child in my arms that you've allowed me to parent. Thank you that I am in relationship with my first son in our own unique way.
Yeah.
Help me usher in justice, usher in awareness that on the other side of the door, when you see a video of an adopted child being placed into the arms of longing parents who've longed for this child, there is a woman on the other side, always, 100% of the time, unless she is dead, which is its own tragedy. There is always a human being who gestated, grew that child, and something led her to believe that she was unfit to parent her own child. Whether it's true, whether she is unfit and doesn't have a pathway, maybe she's riddled in her own trauma or addiction or whatever. There's always a reason.
Yeah.
Or she grew up in a space that was so black and white that there wasn't room to be a single teenage mom.
Yeah.
There wasn't resources. There wasn't the Church of Acts that came alongside and brought resource and shared whatever they had for those in need. And who is more in need than a single mother?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, go through this divorce in my early 20s, and then God has miraculously brought my loving husband, Seth, who loves Jesus, who I get to partner with in ministry. I mean, I couldn't have seen that. I didn't see it. I didn't see it for myself. I didn't believe that I even deserved him or these other 3 sons that I get to hold, who I get to heal, like when they're sick, I get to, who I get to nurse.
You're a boy mom.
Boy mom.
4
Was
boys.
made for it.
Becca, thank you for sharing your story. Every time I'm undone, and I feel like every time I hear your story, I get to learn a new part of it. You're amazing. Your story is amazing. Your family is amazing. I get to serve alongside of you, and
The best.
it is the best. And I really, really appreciate you sharing, because I know that it's not easy, and I know your heart. So thank you.
Thank you for giving me space to do it and give the reminder that your story's not over. Yours isn't, mine isn't, stuff to come. But God is always near.